Hi, everybody. Today is Tuesday, July 8th, 2025, and our friend Paul Kirk is back with us. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Nima. Thank you.
I want to start with what's happening here in Brazil BRICS Summit. And looking at the mainstream media, they're trying to somehow diminish the influence of BRICS. But when it comes to BRICS Summit, this in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, as you know, they were talking about for the first time they condemned the attacks on Russia and Iran, and they were talking about tariffs. But how did you find it so far? What's your take on BRICS?
Well, I think BRICS is an example of countries trying to gain their independence from Western domination. I think BRICS is a response to the Russian sanctions. And these sanctions, of course, spread. Venezuela has them, Iran has them. And the way the West functions today, they're still in that colonizing way of thinking that the way they do things, everybody else has to. Everybody has to be subject to whatever the rules are that come out of the West. And so it's a way of having colonies without having colonies. And I think that BRICS is simply a world saying, well, we are going to be sovereign and we're not going to follow your rules. And so I think it's a good thing. It will produce more real diversity. Now, of course, BRICS would not be happening if the dollar hadn't been weaponized. But the minute they weaponize the dollar and they weaponize the SWIFT clearing system by cutting people out from it, well, then that everyone sees that whoever's running that system is weaponized it and it's not reliable, and they could get weaponized if they don't do what Washington wants them to do. So it's sort of a response to the arrogance and the hubris of the United States. That's what BRICS is. And it will continue as long as the arrogance and hubris of Washington continues.
Paul, I remember Donald Trump was somehow before coming to power, before coming to office in the United States, he was mentioning why are we sanctioning Russia and Iran during various interviews before being elected. And how is that changing in his mind? It doesn't seem he before the BRICS summit he said that I'm gonna put tariffs on all these countries who are participating in BRICS. Why is that? Why he's not following the same sort of attitude that he was talking about before coming to office?
Well, he was speaking as a private person, and when he gets into the office of the president, he finds out that there are a lot of powerful people who he can't ignore, and they don't let him do what he said he would do as a private citizen. The American foreign policy, it's hegemonic. And in a way, it always has been. It goes back to the Monroe Doctrine. We told the Europeans, you can't come into South America. We've had wars with people, with Mexico, with Spain, Korea. It's just sort of I don't know how you would call it, but it's a very arrogant kind of foreign policy. and has been. And there used to be conservatives who thought that America shouldn't have any foreign entanglements and that they should just simply tend to their own garden and leave the rest of the world alone. And some of our most famous presidents would say that we are not a country that should have foreign entanglements or foreign allies and enemies or anything like that. Well, all those people have disappeared, and now you have conservatives who are convinced that we have enemies everywhere and we have to get these enemies. And for reasons that are really not clear, Russia's an enemy. Why? China's an enemy. Why? Iran is an enemy. Why? They're not bothering us, but we're bothering them. So you had so much propaganda. A lot of it comes from war propaganda, but the hegemonic policy of the United States today is different because it originated with the collapse of the Soviet Union and the Zionist neoconservatives. Almost all of the American neoconservatives are Jews. They're Zionist Jews. And they saw an opportunity to, with the demise of the Soviet Union, for American hegemony, which they intended to use to clear out the Arabs that were in the way of Israel's expansion, in the way of Greater Israel. And, you know, they had their programs, the documents, 7 countries in 5 years, and were using the United States military and lives and money to remove Israel's opponents. And they were mainly Israel's opponents because of Israel's aggression. So this is a new form of hegemony compared to the old original kind, which was based in some sort of liberal idea of American exceptionalism. We were exceptional people because we had formed up a country based on liberty and freedom and accountable government. And we didn't come out of kings and queens and monarchs and aristocrats and emperors, and the law was the customs of the people determined the law. And of course, all of this we got from the British. But this type of exceptionalism is different from what we have now. And the neoconservatives are a very small group of people. There are not very many of them, but they have dominated foreign policy since the Soviet collapse. And they've broken all the agreements. They broke the promise that the George Herbert Walker Bush administration made to Gorbachev, to the Soviet president, that there would be no expansion of NATO as long as Russia agreed to the reunification of Germany. But all of the treaties that were made to limit nuclear arms, to build trust, to cut down the chance that there would be some kind of a nuclear confrontation, the neoconservatives have destroyed them all. They're all gone. And there hasn't been a government without them since 1991, 1992. And so, but for them, it's not so much for American purposes as for Israel's. See, we've been in wars for almost 25 years against Arab countries for Israel. Well, these Arab countries did nothing to us. Nothing. We destroyed Libya, Iraq, Syria, Somalia. We've destroyed Lebanon. It's nothing like what it used to be. And now they're trying to get us to destroy Iran. And there'll be more. So when you manifest that type of nonsensical aggression, it's not even in our interest. We don't get anything out of it. What are we getting out of it? A bad reputation and shame. We have now Netanyahu, this is the third time he's been to Washington in 6 months. What for? What? It's a tiny little country of no significance. And they go over here and tell us what we have to do. We haven't had Putin here, or the leader of China, or the leader of Iran. We got this mass murderer, Netanyahu. He comes over here 3 times in 6 months. And like every 2 months, he comes over here and gives Trump his marching orders. This makes it very difficult to be proud to be an American. It's kind of shameful, really, isn't it? I mean, you know, the Romans were very careful who they met with. So were the Byzantines. And whoever they met with, they made it clear that they were giving the orders, not the visitor.
Do you think that the United States needs a second 4th of July?
Yeah, I wrote about that. In fact, that was my 4th of July column. I said, who's going to liberate us from the Israelis? It's a good question, isn't it? I mean, it's shameful, really. It makes me ashamed that we have a government that's totally under control of Israel. And we've been at war for the first quarter of the 21st century for Israel. It doesn't do us any good, does us harm. It's our people that got killed and maimed, and it's our money that got wasted. I mean, what is the sum? I don't know. Trillions of dollars we've wasted blowing up Arab countries. You know, and for what purpose? And producing millions of refugees that overrun us as well as Europe. You know, we've gotten nothing out of these wars, and they're all based on the lie of the war on terror. You know, the lie is that the Arabs blew up the World Trade Center. And so this, of course, was an inside job of the neoconservatives. It was their new Pearl Harbor. It gave them the excuse they needed to go to use us to destroy Israel's enemies. So, and nobody wants to investigate that.
Paul, what? Go ahead if you want.
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, in this summit, in BRICS summit, we know that Indonesia is a full member of BRICS, is a new and full member of BRICS. And there, you look at the list of countries who want to join BRICS: Vietnam, Malaysia, Thailand, and these countries are huge in terms of, when we consider Indonesia, for example, or Malaysia, these are huge countries with big economies.
Yeah.
And if they join all these forces together, and as you've mentioned, it's not because they woke up and said, oh, we want to make a new institution to just be against the United States. It's all because of the tariffs, because sanctions. They were talking about tariffs in this summit. One of the main issues, the most important issue to be discussed, that was discussed in this summit, was the case of tariffs. Do you feel that somehow in the mind of those people in power in Washington, do they really feel that tariffs are different from sanctions? That's why you can use somehow them to punish the other countries? Because in my opinion, both tariffs and sanctions are the same thing. But from your point of view, what is the difference between these sort of tactics on their part? If it is that's a tactic.
Well, I think I regard tariffs as a legitimate way for a country to protect an industry that otherwise would be stomped out by established industries in other countries. If you want to,
We have tariffs here, by the way, in Brazil. I know what you're
yeah,
talking about.
yeah, and I think every country has had tariffs, and Trump's claim, and I don't know if it's true or not, is that other countries' tariffs on us were higher than ours on them, and he wants to force everybody to have the same low tariffs like we were charging, and his method of doing that is to threaten them with high ones. I don't know how real any of these tariffs turn out to be. They seem to be some kind of a negotiating thing. He threatens huge tariffs, and then the tariffs go away, or they make exemptions. We've talked about it. You know, a lot of the initial tariffs, they really didn't apply to anything because the list of exemptions was so long, and the exemptions were factors of production that American companies needed, so they took them off. It's kind of like the deportations. You know, he was going to deport all these people, but now we're not going to deport restaurant workers and hotel workers and the people that work in the chicken factories, the slaughterhouses, the agricultural workers. We're not going to deport. So the list of people who are not going to be deported, there's hardly anybody left on the list. It appears they'll end up deporting the criminal gangs, but that's not millions of people. So what Trump's found out is that huge sectors of the American food and restaurant and hotel and entertainment industry is dependent on all of these illegals. And so the companies are telling him, don't you dare take away our workforce. Don't you dare. And I think that the same thing happened with the tariffs. The company said, look, you're going to drive us into bankruptcy. We're not going to be able to get these things. And so, okay, we'll exempt it. Well, when you exempt it for the first person, you're going to have to exempt it for the next 1,000 people. So these things, I don't know. I think it's just Trump not understanding. Now, it's not so much whether it's tariffs or sanctions or what it is. It's a form of bulliness. It's bulliness. Europe and Washington have been bullies because they had the military power and the economic power. You know, the British rule the world. The sun never set on the British Empire. You know, the French had colonies, even the Germans, until they lost the war, had colonies in Africa. And the United States is just a bully. And I think that's what people are objecting to. Now, during the long period of the Cold War, of the so-called communist menace, when people had this fear that the Bolshevik Revolution would continue to expand and take over more and more of the country, they put up with American bulliness because it was the way to protect them. It's the way they were protected. And so they felt they had to go along, incorporate into whatever Washington said. But the Soviet Union is gone. Russia is not aggressive, and China still says it's communist, but it's not. It's just totally capitalist, you know. In fact, they seem to have a smarter version of it than we do. So the people don't feel these threats. They try to keep a Russian threat alive in Europe by saying, oh, if we don't stop them in Ukraine, they'll take France and Germany and everything else. But I don't think ordinary people believe that. This is something governments are saying for reasons that are unclear. And so it's bossiness, it's bulliness, and I just don't think it works any longer. I don't think people are afraid of the bully. BRICS is a way of assertion for a country. And I don't think BRICS is going to be a political organization against the West. I don't think that's what I don't even think Putin thinks of it that way. It's going to be an association of countries that treat each other according to international law, according to the way things are supposed to happen. So the Americans don't behave that way. They impose their own rules over international law, and this is Putin's big objection, and I think all these other countries. So I don't think it's a political organization. But it's a way of trying to look. Let's go on with our business and let the West dwindle away. And I don't think it'll ever be a military alliance against the West or anything. It's just a way of being able to trade, to exchange resources, because different countries have different things, and it'll give birth to a second world. There'll be a second world. That's clearly not a third world. There'll be a second first world. And the first world will be moving backwards toward the third world. That's the way I see it. These other countries now will come to life, and they'll get along. No one wants to conquer them. Putin doesn't want to conquer them. The Chinese doesn't want to conquer them. You know, Chinese are building their modern form of the Silk Road, which is to have commerce between all of these countries. They're obviously confident, the Chinese, that they be one of the leaders of this, but it's a non-military form of leadership more than domination.
Yeah. Paul, I don't know if you watched the interview Tucker Carlson had with the president of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian. And
no, I didn't get to see that.
Yeah,
no.
that was somehow, to me, was surprising, because while Netanyahu was meeting with Donald Trump, he published the interview with the president of Iran, and the main goal, I would say, the main message of the Iranian president was that whatever is happening between Iran and the United States is because of Israel and the way that Netanyahu is behaving. And Netanyahu is trying to do everything to just put an end to the talks, put in whatever related